Welcome back. I'm really excited for today because we'll get into actually creating and doing some project work, which is fun. The idea is that we'll talk through different methods of UX research specifically, but learn how to do those methods with a mock app development. I am putting that behind Patreon, which has a paywall. You'll understand why I'm doing that when you dive in. I'll put a little explainer in there too. But yeah, I'll still cover things on YouTube, but if you're looking for the materials that go along with it, really behind the scenes, nitty-gritty of how to do something, I'm trying to emulate like the projects we had in grad school that you could get feedback on. So then that's the other thing about Patreon. It'll allow me to give my attention to those people who are taking it seriously and for a certain amount of time, hopefully give feedback on those projects. I don't know if I'll eternally be able to do that, but I think that's one of the biggest benefits of going to a program like in grad school, or if it's a boot camp thing, is you get feedback from someone more experienced on a real life tangible project. So trying to find a way to do that, and yeah, I think Patreon might be the answer. So cool, let's just get into it. This idea of creating an app or creating something means that eventually it would be out in the world and evaluated. What is good design? What are we qualifying that as? Because good design, well, for me, it might just mean it's easy for me to understand. But we don't want to, as a professional industry, define things by our own metrics. We want to have something that is unbiased and objective and making sure that it's inclusive. So instead of saying like, oh, is this good design? Say, who is this design good for? Who is it not good for? Another case where design ruins my life. This is clipped to go this way, which, is for a male shirt because the buttons are like this, so it goes over, because we have assumed a heteronormative lifestyle in even designing our clothes. It is wild. So every time I'm like, okay, I gotta figure this out, and then this flap isn't strong enough for it to hold in the hole, and then something gets muffled, and then I complain about it, and people are like, you complain about a lot of stuff. Yeah, well, a lot of stuff is fucked up. And then the second that I get it in, I remember that I need something. See? Falls down. I clip it also on this. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So hopefully we don't really have issues with that. So, for example, this new building in Austin is going up, and when the sun is setting, you kind of get a reflection in the windows, because I think it was, this is hypotheses, but I think it was intentionally angled so that it's true west and gets a nice pretty view of the sunset. In this picture you can just see the clouds are reflecting on it too, which is also nice during the day. I would go, oh, that's good design. Well, a skyscraper is good design in the sense that I can see this nice reflection if it is going up, but skyscrapers also kill a ton of birds every year. It has detrimental impacts on our ecosystem and environment. Maybe not detrimental, but it does have impacts on our ecosystem and environment. And so if you classify that as good design, well then someone who, cares about bird conservation or just birds in general would be like, that's not good design. It kills all these birds. How could you say that's good? Good is a subjective measure. That's why we want to be specific. But let's look at a couple of definitions of what good design is in terms of UX. I like kind of a general definition for usability. Just, is this easy to use? There's a book by Steve Krug, Don't Make Me Think. It's a nice, easy kind of introduction to usability specifically. For example, problems I find that are likely to cause users grief, is how he defines usability issues. Interaction design, deciding what happens next when the user clicks, taps, or swipes. Information architecture, figuring out how everything should be organized. Now, there are way more detailed definitions for sure. Okay, so here, this is something that I don't agree with in his book. He says if something is usable, so usability, he defines by whether a person of average or even below average ability and experience can figure out how to use the thing to accomplish something without it being more trouble than it's worth. So, by that definition, he's already excluding people by saying, well, they should be of above average, maybe below average intelligence or ability. And I think something needs to be usable, it needs to be inclusive, it needs to be usable for anybody regardless of their ability or their intelligence or their context. But then also without it being more trouble than it's worth. So that's interesting because that's a dynamic evaluation of something. The worth to someone then determines how usable it is. And people will put up with usability issues when they see value in something. They'll put up with poor websites or longer tasks if it accomplishes a goal they're very motivated for. But a lot of things affect our motivation. It's not just the value that we will get in return. It can be things like, our blood sugar or what type of setting or environment we're in. So I don't like those being involved in my definition of usability, but I do like the simplicity. Basically, if you want to make it usable, don't make me think, Anyway, the standard for usability that I was taught is efficient, effective, and satisfying. Is it efficient, effective, and satisfying? See, and they said, you need to know this for your job. I don't have it memorized. Maybe I'm an awful UX research practitioner, but I don't believe so. And I'm here to tell you that if you don't have a sticky brain that remembers super detailed facts, that's fine. So NN group, let's look up theirs. And then interaction design. Okay, they have 5 elements. They have effectiveness, efficiency, engagement. That's not a normal one. Error tolerance. Okay, what are these? These are not the standard. Okay, so we're not gonna do it with that one. So this is what my professor's like, you gotta memorize this. 9241 is the ISO code, International Standards of Organization Ergonomics Requirements. Usability of an application or resource refers to the effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction with which specified users can achieve specified goals in a particular specified environment. So we define effectiveness by the accuracy and completeness with which users achieve specified goals, meaning can they get the goal done? Is it effective at solving the problem or meeting the goal? Efficiency, resources expended in relation to the accuracy and completeness with which users achieve goals. So efficiency would probably include things like errors, time, cognitive load and that stuff. And then satisfaction. So is there freedom from discomfort and positive attitudes towards the use of the product? Okay? So those are the ones that are the standard definition. But then an N group, who is kind of the standard of user experience, they say efficiency, errors, satisfaction, memorability, and learnability. So they combine this idea of utility and usability, utility being whether or not you need this application or the features that it has are needed, and then usable is how easy and pleasant. So a lot of companies might have a usable app, but there's no utility, so they don't have adoption of that app because, users can use it, but they don't need to for anything. Okay, and why did I start talking about usability? I don't know, probably good design. Oh, defining it by what measures. So, nuanced thing, we want to build something more than just usable. We want it to have utility as well. And then if you go even further into this idea beyond, a capitalistic mindset of product development, you might encounter something like value sensitive design, where what do we value? Maybe it's human self-actualization. And so then we take a metric to make our product be measured in its effectiveness to produce that outcome. If we value our earth and our environment, then a lot of these products wouldn't meet standards because they would have to measure up, okay, how much data you're storing, what impact does that have on the environment, what's a better way to either store less data or in a more environmentally friendly way or whatever that has less of a impact on the earth, because that's a value we have and we're measuring how good of design our product has by that parameter. So just things to kind of think about, like, okay, what is good, what is bad? Not only open up that definition of good and bad, but also say, okay, not just a thing is good or bad, but knowing it can be good for one person and bad for another helps you identify those nuances that exist and not overgeneralize, you know? So, okay. But again, I don't know why we got into this really.